Okay, live and admit. And you're on, Divya.
Okay. Can everyone hear me all right? Great. So warm welcome to everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Divya. I'm a long-standing and very proud member of the Brooklyn Eagles. And I've been part of this group pretty much since the day I became a Brooklynite. The Brooklyn Eagles have been presenting this Lit Prize since its inception, and we're very honored to carry on this tradition here tonight. The Book Prize honors books that exemplify the library's mission of addressing the urgent social, political, and artistic issues of our time. The nominated titles were compiled by a panel of BPL librarians, which is very unique to this prize, drawing not only on their expertise with traditional literature and contemporary writing, but also on their knowledge of the patrons they work with every day. The prize is one of only a few major literary prizes awarded by a public library system and selected by a panel of librarians. And I'm biased, but I think we have the best librarians in the country, if not the world. So tonight we will hear from some of those librarians along with the authors of our 8 shortlisted titles. And before we dive in to the main event, just want to use this time briefly to tell you about the Eagles. This is the beginning of our Stay Home and Read campaign. And this year, all of the funds we raise from this campaign will go directly to support the Books Unbanned initiative, which hopefully you've heard about. There has been a tremendous amount of press about it. And this was launched as a coordinated effort in response to censor books in schools and public libraries. Over 100 teens applied for e-cards in the first 24 hours. And we have been assured that we are meeting a critical need by implementing this initiative. So far, we've issued over 5,500 e-cards from every state, DC and Puerto Rico. These are hungry readers. Collectively, they've checked out over 35,000 books. They're borrowing books for LGBTQ and BIPOC interests, titles on romance, history, things as niche as antiquing. But the best thing is that they are reading whatever is available, what they choose, and the urgent need for this initiative is really driving us forward. Personally, I have donated $150 to this effort. The overall goal that we have this year is $20,000. So I really hope that you will give whatever you can. Anything counts. And you can donate by going to brooklynlibrary.org/stayhomeandread. Okay, very last thing, sorry. Last piece of bookkeeping, Wednesday, November 2nd is when we celebrate the 2 winning book prize authors. It will be a virtual event hosted by Books Are Magic and hosted by Isaac Fitzgerald. If you're not familiar with him, he is MC extraordinaire and a wonderful presenter. The event is free and open to all. So please join, save the date, Friday, November 2nd. So without further ado, I'm happy to kick off this event and introduce the first librarian we have here tonight. Muse McCormick with the Brooklyn Public Library. I'll pass it on to you.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Muse, and I'm the Technology Resource Specialist at Greenpoint, at the Greenpoint branch of the Brooklyn Public Library, and a member of this year's Fiction Committee. Unfortunately, the author that I will be presenting tonight, Becky Chambers, could not be here this evening, but I'm excited to introduce her meditative novella, A Psalm for the Wild-Built, as one of the books on our shortlist this year. When I first read A Psalm for the Wild-Built, I could not stop thinking about it, not just for the hopeful and peaceful vision of what could come after climate change, but also for the questions it asks that resonate with anyone who's wondered about humanity's place in the future. The novella revolves around sibling Dex, a monk who becomes unsatisfied with their day-to-day routine and uproots to change positions and become a tea monk, traveling and serving as both listener and barista to the people in surrounding villages. But still, that does not quiet their longing for, as they put it, the sound of crickets, animals thought to be extinct in a post-climate change Earth. Along this journey, Dex meets a robot named Mosscap, and together they embark on a quest to ask questions and find calm amidst uncertainty. A Psalm for the Wild-Built is comfortable asking questions it does not try to answer. It is a warm cup of tea and a crackling fire for anyone who could use a break, as the epigraph so aptly states. And unlike so much science fiction, its dream of the future is one of harmony. The problems created come from internally. Mosscap wants to know, what do people need? That is a hard question to answer ourselves, let alone anyone else. Queerness is a given in this future. Struggles we face today stemming from racism, class, and climate change seem to be resolved. Humanity has found a way to live in harmony with the world, but we still struggle to find harmony within ourselves sometimes. I knew this book had to be shortlisted because it's not just a stunning piece of fiction, and genre fiction at that, it is a true philosophical text. You will leave every page thinking and coming back to ponder more about yourself, the world, and of course, robots. Please join me in congratulating Becky Chambers and A Psalm for the Wild-Built. So I'm just going to read a short passage from the book, and hopefully you will check the book out from your local library or get it from an indie bookstore and you'll get to read the rest. The clearing was level and spacious, yet snug. Wreathed with trees as though the forest were cupping its hands around it, there was no pavement there. Only the brown and green of good growing things. Dex parked both bike and wagon, then collapsed happily on the ground. A cloud of fireflies puffed up from the moss into the air, flickering flirtatiously. The mattress of tiny leaves below Dex was soft and cool, a welcome balm for sweating skin. Ah, they said to the forest. The forest replied with rustling needles, creaking limbs, and nothing at all. Nobody in the world knows where I am right now, they thought. And the notion of that filled them with bubbling excitement. They had canceled their life, bailed out on a whim. The person they knew themselves to be should have been rattled by that. But someone else was at the helm now, someone rebellious and reckless. Someone who had picked a direction and gone for it, as if it were no more import than choosing a sandwich. Dex didn't know who they were in that moment. Perhaps that was why they were smiling. The fireflies were bright against the pinking sky, and Dex took that as a cue to set up camp. A few geometric unfoldings later, Dex had conjured both kitchen and shower. Food and a good scrub were imminent, and a chair waited beside the clean fire drum for when all else was complete. Dex put their hands on their hips and surveyed the scene. They nodded, not a traitor nod or a service nod, a pleased nod, a satisfied nod, the kind of nod that nodded best when it had no audience. They hooked up the fire drum to the Degoa's tank strapped on to the bottom of the wagon and switched the burner on. A soft whoop preceded the friendly licks of flame, enticing Dex to lean in. It wasn't too cold out, but their exhausted muscles craved heat, and Dex couldn't help indulging. After a minute or so, they took out their pocket computer in search of music. To their surprise, they still had satellite signal and were able to access the nighttime playlist curated by Woodland Streamcasters. Revamped folk classics flowed forth from the speakers affixed to the kitchen, and Dex's smile grew. Yeah, this was good. So Becky Chambers isn't here, but once again, please congratulate her and her amazing novella. And if you get a chance, I really do suggest that you all go read it. Thank you. And on to the next librarian.
Hi, my name is Carl Fossum. I'm a librarian at the Bay Ridge branch. And It's my honor and privilege to introduce Miriam Chansey and her marvelous choral novel, What Storm, What Thunder. On January 12, 2010, a 7.0 magnitude earthquake struck the Haitian capital of Port-au-Prince, killing as many as 316,000 Haitians. Chansey gives voice to the voiceless through 10 interconnected tales of victims and survivors of this cataclysmic event. From a mother haunted by the ghosts of her dead children, to a young boy trapped in the rubble, to an expat with a secret past, and a wise old woman who remembers them all. I was mesmerized by the variety of literary styles used to make each voice unique and distinct. From the stoic wariness of Malu, full of the weight and memory of full of the power and weight of memory, to the haunted poetic pose of Sarah mourning the loss of her children, to the simple, heartbreaking directness of the young boy Jonas, buried in the earthquake, attempting to deal with the world ending all around him. I defy anyone to read his testimony and not be moved. What Storm, What Thunder is both devastating and tender, but not meant to pummel the reader with unremitting sadness. Rather, it is a show of great humanity in the midst of great violence, meant to guide us toward deep reflection and hopefully healing. Please join me in congratulating Miriam J.A. Chansey for What Storm, What Thunder being selected to the short list of the Brooklyn Public Library Book Prize.
Hi, everyone. My name is Miriam Chansey, and I'm the author of What Storm, What Thunder, now shortlisted for the Brooklyn Public Library Book Prize, for which I'm very honored. And I want to congratulate all the long-listed and shortlisted authors with whom I stand. This is especially important for me, given that Brooklyn has such a high Haitian population, all of whom I am sure were touched to some degree, directly or indirectly, by the events of the 2010 earthquake, which is the subject of my novel, What Storm, What Thunder. The novel is told in 10 narrative voices, Haitians mostly, 9 out of 10 are Haitians, of various backgrounds, social, economic status, ages, genders. And what I attempted to do was to give the reader as wide a sense as possible of what people went through just before, during, and after the January 12th, 2010 earthquake, in an effort to break through, the sense that Haitians are a monolith or that everybody went through the same thing. And so you encounter 3 family groups through these 10 narrative voices, and you also experience their losses, their triumphs, their love, and how the community rallied after the earthquake. Perhaps the most dominant of the voices is that of the market woman, who all of the characters encounter, who initiates the reader into the stories and then also closes the novel. So today I'd like to share with you a brief reading from Malu in her opening to What Storm, What Thunder. So this is Malu. I watched. That's what old market women do. We watch. But this time, the lot of us market women sprang to action, even as our bones creaked for lack of cartilage and oil. Like the others on the street, we used anything in hand we could find, useless things like spoons and forks, the metal ends of umbrellas, as if our puny things, our fingernails, could move all that. Only the lucky were saved. Being lucky meant simply that you were closer to the surface, or that fewer things blocked the way to being found. We heard people on their cell phones all up and down the street begging frantically for help, giving directions to where they thought they were beneath the rubble within the rooms of their houses. Phones rang, and we heard people answer them. Then fewer and fewer voices. the tinny, persistent ringing of cell phone tones, different songs arising like wind from underground with no answer. We heard our own voices screaming at each other, asking for help, not knowing what to do. Faces covered with dust and sweat and other things later to be determined what to do. There was nothing to do but to scream, try anything, flail our hands, scratch at the earth like my chickens when they get confused because their fresh laid eggs disappear one by one and still they lay more. Try anything and still it's too late. It's too little. After the earth rose and split open, yes, I saw angels walking, but there had also been dust, white dust, everywhere, caking all objects and every moving thing. The dust came from the concrete crumbling to pieces as buildings flattened. But there were also other things mixed in, blood and bones. Had I mistaken the walking dead for angels, survivors stumbling through the debris with the same white flakes covering their bodies from head to toe that covered mine? Eventually, we, the market women, remembered our oil lamps and lit them one by one, those of us who could. Only part of a market had been crushed, the part against a wall. Still, it was impossible to tell what belonged to whom, and at that point, no one cared. We worked at freeing those we could, said prayers for the others, promising deliverance to those we could not get to give them some solace, some hope in their final moments, because salvation would soon be theirs. Then back down the street, darting back and forth, using the goods from the market to feed those working at rescue, doing what we could, as we always did, our large bodies moving through the rubble as if we were land whales, made for swimming through dust-laden air, made for parting human waves. So that is a brief excerpt from What Storm, What Thunder. Thank you so much to everyone involved with this prize, the librarians, the readers. Thank you for this great honor of having What Storm, What Thunder first on your long list and now on your short list. I am truly blessed and grateful. Thank you so much.
Excuse me. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Baker, and I'm a librarian at the Spring Creek branch of Brooklyn Public Library, and I'm one of this year's chairs for the fiction committee. I am honored to introduce Social Gonzalez and her stunning debut novel, Olga Dies Dreaming, as one of our short list titles for this year. Olga Dies Dreaming is an examination of the Puerto Rican experience in Brooklyn as two siblings attempt to traverse the difficulties of racism, homophobia, and family. Olga is a wedding planner for upper-class families, and her brother, Pietro, has risen through the ranks and now serves as a congressman for their Sunset Park neighborhood. As gentrification closes in on their homes and Hurricane Maria brings devastation to Puerto Rico, both siblings need to rethink their previously held beliefs to find their connections between themselves and their homeland. I personally love this novel because of the well-developed characters. Each had their own specific place in the book, and all of their traits enhanced the novel greatly. The interspersed information about Puerto Rican history and their diaspora also added layers to the novel that I think truly made it a masterpiece. Finally, she was able to bring out so many emotions while you're reading the book, from laughter to tears to frustration. And I think all of these traits encapsulate a great book. So please welcome me in congratulating Social Gonzalez and her novel, Olga Dies Dreaming. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Xochitl Gonzalez, and I'm going to read from my novel, Olga Dies Dreaming. Only 5 stops separated Olga from her neighborhood of origin. As a teenager sneaking off to clubs or a recent college grad commuting to her first couple of jobs, she never gave them any thought, the extra distance that separated her from the buzz of Manhattan. Yet now, from as close as downtown Brooklyn, the old neighborhood felt far, remote. The process of getting there is something that required preparation, time blocked off, a calendar invite even. It was such a beautiful day she decided to walk a bit, so she hopped off the train at 36th Street, noticing the hipsters exiting the same stop. Were they hipsters even, Olga thought? Weren't these just yuppies by another name? For surely with such ubiquity of style, they were no longer technically hip. As she suspected, at the top of the subway stairs, the group broke right, heading west to the waterfront mall that had sprung up there, eager for a day of poking through vintage clothes and eating poke bowls. She shook her head. How had Prieto ever thought this development would be good for the neighborhood? Olga herself broke left, heading uphill, east towards Fifth Avenue. Sunset Park had 2 main strips of retail, each of which ran from the park, corner of 41st Street, south to 60th or 65th Street, depending on who you asked. What no one debated, though, was which belonged to whom. Fifth Avenue was the bustling Latino strip, while 8th Avenue offered one of the best Chinatown experiences New York had to offer. Olga had grown up just off Fifth, and while some of the stores had changed and the restaurants had become more Mexican than Puerto Rican, she was comforted by how little in way of energy and spirit was different. There were inevitably children's clothing stores, furniture shops still offering bedroom sets by layaway, and dollar stores whose awnings teemed with suspended inflatable dolls, beach chairs, laundry carts, and other impulse purchases a mom might make on a Saturday afternoon, exhausted by errand running with her kids. There was a sneaker store where Olga used to buy her cute kicks, the fruit store Prieto had worked at in high school, the little storefront that sold the kind of old lady bras Abuelita used to wear. On the sidewalks, the Mexican women began to set up their snack stands. Mango with lime and chili on this corner, tamales on that. Until the Mexicans had come to Sunset Park, Olga had never tried any of this food, and now she always tried to leave a little room to grab a snack on her way home. Despite the relatively early hour, most of the shops were open, music blasting into the streets, granting the avenue the aura of a party. In a few more hours, cars with their stereos pumping, teens with boom boxes en route to the neighborhood's public pool, and laughing children darting in front of their mothers would add to the cacophony that Olga had grown to think of as the sounds of a Saturday. In the distance, the pale green arch of the Verrazano Bridge, its arms gracefully splayed out in embrace, presided over it all. She walked a block past her own Temasquepan, her favorite bakery in the neighborhood, its window full of lavish buttercream cakes, the likes of which her clients would surely have never seen. Multi-tiered wedding cakes with a dozen plastic bridesmaid and groomsmen figurines, descending spiral staircases, a Ken-like doll wearing nothing but a Speedo lying in repose atop a cake intended for a bachelorette, a Barbie torso wearing a bridal veil popped out of a cake, her gown fashioned from mounds of cream. This one, Olga imagined, was for a bridal shower. She ordered a coffee and a buttered roll, knowing that the coffee would come with frothed hot milk, the butter whipped and sweet, and that the 2 things would cost her $3, the price having risen $1 in the past decade. There was no need for this snack. The idea that there wouldn't be food at the house was utterly ridiculous. But this was comfort food, ritual eating she needed to do in order to know that she was back home. Home. Olga hadn't lived there in over 15 years, but time did not matter. It was bigger than its physical size, this house. It housed all her grandmother's hopes and fears for her young family on the mainland, all of her children's dreams and sorrows, and those of her grandchildren too. Had her grandmother laid the stones and mortar herself, this place could not embody her more. When they first came from Arecibo, Abuelita, Abuelo, and their brood, they lived in a tenement in Spanish Harlem with another family. Abuelita saved her pennies little by little to buy her own house, but when her husband left, fed up with this mainland experiment, she had to adjust her plans. She found the rental apartment upstairs through a woman at the garment factory where she worked. How nice it would be to have a big apartment so close to her job, all to themselves. The neighborhood was Scandinavian and Irish back then, and the landlord, Mr. Olson, did not want to rent to a Puerto Rican family. That he made plain. But her grandmother charmed him. She was high-heeled and lipsticked, and she had left her 4 young children at home. They rented there for years, living in the upstairs unit, little by little buying furniture, saving more money, warming Mr. Olson to their family. When he finally decided he'd had enough of Brooklyn, enough of the Puerto Rican wave flooding Sunset Park for the factory jobs nearby, he didn't want to sell. He wanted Olga's grandmother to buy it, to give her a taste of the American dream. And somehow she did it. Little by little, she used to say, everything impossible comes to pass. So the family moved from the rental upstairs to their owner's unit downstairs, and the first thing her grandmother did, or so everyone said, was to sit her children down and tell them that no one in their family would ever have to worry about having a roof over their head again, and no one ever did. The next thing she did, according to lore, was put on her music nice and loud so they all could dance.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, can you please raise your glasses or whatever you may be drinking to the fiction shortlist? Cheers. Feel free to make some noise in the chat as well. And now for
Cheers.
the nonfiction.
All right, we're moving on to nonfiction. Hello, my name is Emily Heath. I'm a librarian at the Red Hook branch of the Brooklyn Public Library, and I'm also the chair of this year's nonfiction committee for the Brooklyn Book Prize. I feel truly honored to introduce The Trayvon Generation, which is the most recent work of renowned poet, educator, and cultural advocate Elizabeth Alexander, as the first title on our shortlist. The Trayvon Generation has as its centerpiece a very striking essay that was first published in the New Yorker that addresses the generation of Black youth, among them our Alexander's own sons, who are coming of age in the shadow of the inescapable cultural narrative of violence and brutality against Black people in America. In this and the other essays that make up this short but intensely powerful work, Alexander describes what it is to be yet another generation struggling to do the race work, which is the most profound problem of 21st century life. She calls our attention to Black artists' responses throughout the years to this problem, and she includes excerpts of the work of other poets and beautifully reproduced works of visual art, alongside her own personal anecdotes and meditations. Alexander vividly demonstrates that Black art is a defiant cry of joy and strength and resilience that demands to be heard and celebrated in order to drown out the false narrative of white supremacy in our nation. It's our belief as a committee that this book will enrich the understanding of everyone who reads it. One committee member said it was the work that we read for this year that had the most profound impact on their way of thinking. Another member told about the way it seemed to resonate with them even more on reading it for a second time. They expressed a wish to reread it again and again each year. We were impressed with not only the literary quality of this book, the pressing contemporary relevance of its subject matter, but also the striking and unique format comprising poetry, narrative prose, and visual art. You can pick this book up and turn to any page and find sustaining words and images of beauty and wisdom. We congratulate Elizabeth Alexander on her remarkable achievement in nonfiction with The Trayvon Generation. We are proud to have it on our shortlist.
Thank you for those lovely words. I am honored that The Trayvon Generation has been shortlisted for the Brooklyn Public Library's Book Prize and is in company of so many other great works. It has been meaningful that The Trayvon Generation seems to be of use to so many young people and is making its way in the world. I deeply appreciate the BPL librarians and library staff who contributed to the jury and read our work with so much care. Robert Weinstein, Carl Fossum, and Jessica Harwick, thank you for chairing the committee. And to the Brooklyn Eagles, thank you for organizing this effort. Library workers play a crucial role in stitching together our social fabric, understanding and responding to the needs of their community, providing equitable access to information and resources, and being on the front lines of many pressing issues today. Library workers model being a caring, informed, and active good neighbor. So to the jury and to all of the BPL library workers for all that you do, thank you. Tonight, I would like to read a short section from The Trayvon Generation. The Trayvon Generation. There are Black people in the future. The artist Alicia Wormsley made a work of art that first appeared as a billboard over the racially gentrifying East Liberty neighborhood of Pittsburgh. It reads, "There are Black people in the future." She has said, "I do not own the sentence. It belongs to anyone. I want people to use it." There have subsequently been "There are Black people in the future" billboards in Detroit, Chicago, Kansas City, Houston, New York, East St. Louis, and London. And Wormsley has helped raise grant money for artists, writers, thinkers, and activists to use and engage with the phrase and multiply its power and evocation. To me, the billboard is at first glance a joyous surprise in the sky. It brings a chuckle because it states what we hope is the obvious. Of course, there are Black people in the future. There will always be Black people. Black people are the future. We are forever. And to riff on Gwendolyn Brooks, we occur everywhere. And Black people next to future is an act of conjuration. There are is a promise and declaration. But could the continuation of Black people be in question? The artwork raises the specter of vulnerability in our specific impermanence. This mighty entity called Black people, who survived when we were not meant to, who embodied and defined humanity even when we were legally described as 3/5 human, and through the indignities of discrimination and struggle created the culture that rocked the world. Could we become extinct? Could the violence and the hatred take us down? Remember, wrote Audre Lorde, we were never meant to survive. Black people today are the product of people who survived, who were not meant to flourish. Lucille Clifton's poem, "Won't You Celebrate With Me," opens with what we think is a joyful space of straightforward celebration. But the short poem concludes with what I would call a blues exaltation, that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed. Black flourishing and futurity occur against the odds. But here we are, and yes, we did. Contemporary Black people, if we claim our inheritance, carry not only the hopes and dreams of a generation, but also the will and ingenuity to survive. Something tries to kill us every day. It happens again, as it always happens again. This time the name is Daunte Wright, murdered in Minneapolis in the midst of the Chauvin trial. If our televisions are on that day, we see both of these men being killed by police over and over again. We also, on this same day, watch Afro-Latino Lieutenant Caron Nazario pulled over, yelled at with belligerent language, continue to calmly ask, "Why am I being pulled over?" and evenly state, "I am on active duty in the armed services and serving this country." "What's going on?" Nazario asks. And the police officer replies, "What's going on is you're fixing to ride the lightning, son." Then pepper sprays and tasers him. In addition to showing excessive violence and punishment meted out against Black people, including our children, so many of these stories raise the questions of how quickly anyone can distance themselves from children they are not immediately responsible for. And again, to Gwendolyn Brooks, we must always ask of the community, what does it mean to say we are all responsible for our children, even if we cannot protect them?
Good evening. My name is Kimberly Bean, and I'm a librarian at Adams Street branch of the Brooklyn Public Library. And I was on the nonfiction committee this year. It's my honor and privilege to introduce Hola Papi, How to Come Out in a Walmart Parking Lot, and Other Life Lessons by John Paul Brammer. Hola Papi is a collection of essays that speaks to the core of what it means to be human. Brammer opens each chapter with questions we all ponder, like, how do I let myself enjoy things? Or how do you keep chasing your dreams when you're most definitely a failure? He answers the questions with humor, tenderness, and authenticity by weaving in his own life experiences growing up biracial, gay, and in Oklahoma in the late 90s. This book will tug at your heartstrings while also making you laugh out loud. What struck us as a committee, and me personally, was the universal messages of this book. This book is not just for the LGBTQIA community, although definitely represented, but for anyone living the human experience. Finding and making sense of your own identity and how you fit into the world are at the core of this book. And although Brammer is young, he writes with wisdom, insight, and maturity that he pours onto the page. Please join me in congratulating John Paul Brammer on his book, Ola Poppy, How to Come Out in a Walmart Parking Lot, and other life lessons for being part of the shortlist.
Hello, Brooklyn Public Library. This is John Paul Bramer, author of Ola Poppy, How to Come Out in a Walmart Parking Lot and Other Life Lessons. And I truly wish I could be there with you in person today to give a reading. I'm so excited and so grateful that my book was shortlisted for the nonfiction prize. It means more to me than I think I could ever express. I did want to send you a reading, however, from one of my favorite chapters in the book, which is about how to be a real Mexican, where I worked at a tortilla factory to learn the Spanish that I didn't grow up with because my abuelos only wanted us to speak English. So here's that. Before I quit, I had my final Spanish exam. It took the form of a disgruntled customer whom Alejandro and Federico giddily pushed me into dealing with. The customer, a short, slim woman in a halter top who wore her sunglasses indoors and had long acrylic nails, had received beef tacos when she'd ordered chicken. She marched her plastic tray up to the register and slammed it down. "No English, her," Alejandro said, grinning ear to ear. "Go ahead." "Fine," I sighed. I walked up to the counter, ready to face the final boss of my video game. The woman looked at me, and although I couldn't see her eyes, I could tell she was ready to behead me. "Hola," I said to her, "¿Qué es tu problema?" I wasn't exactly sure what she said back, but it sounded like she was methodically cursing out my ancestors one by one, plucking them individually from the branches of my family tree, generation by generation, before finally arriving at me. "Lo siento," I said again and again in my dumb gringo accent. "Voy a make tacos nuevos." I heard Alejandro and Federico busting a gut in the kitchen. "Un minuto, por favor." I went back to the kitchen, punched Federico and Alejandro, and made the chicken tacos. The woman, meanwhile, was still talking without me there, fighting the very memory of me. I returned with her food. I meant to tell her they were on the house, that they were free. What I actually said, according to Federico's translation, was freedom tacos. "Here," I had said, "freedom tacos." The woman, perhaps so thrown off by this that she perceived it as a power move, accepted the new tacos and went back to her table. Alejandro and Federico practically jumped on me, applauding me and laughing so hard I thought they might fall over. For a moment, I stopped taking myself so seriously. I had utterly failed. I was having a great time. At last, my final day in the tortilla factory came. I was asked to do the most unpleasant tasks in the restaurant as a farewell gift. I walked into the sticky room where the bladders of soda were kept for the pop machine, and I cleaned the floor. I cleaned the bathrooms and then the tables. But the worst task was carrying a vat of hot grease out to the dumpster. Federico helped me with this, yellow grease slapping up at the lip of the vat as we walked, threatening to spill over with each step. "Ten cuidado, Wampa," he told me. But I was distracted. I was reflecting on my time at the restaurant and on the man walking backwards in front of me. I watched the snake god tattooed on his arm, wriggling as he flexed, its body covered in feathers, ancient and fierce. It was my second favorite tattoo of his. The other was the enormous Our Lady of Guadalupe he had on his back. She made a less than miraculous appearance once in the kitchen when Chewy had accused Federico of being a dirty bastard. Federico had lifted up his shirt, turned around, and said, "Say it to her." I was thinking how funny it was that these two competing gods could find common place on Federico's body when my foot caught on a crack in the concrete. I stumbled a little, enough to spill hot grease on Federico's arm. "Shit," he shouted. We quickly set the vat down and retreated into the shade of the building where we sat in the grass, Federico hissing into his arm, my heart racing a mile a minute as I said, over and over, the one stupid phrase I could rely on. Lo siento. Lo siento. I still say that to my abuela sometimes in my head, hoping it will reach her wherever she is, be it heaven or hell or what have you. I feel I want to apologize to her, like I apologized to Federico, for using her pain to validate my identity. I used to resent the fact that she didn't teach me Spanish, that she didn't maintain our family traditions. Now that I understand everything better, I understand that her decision to ditch those things was more authentically Mexican than performing any of the rituals I thought of as real, listening to reggaetons, making tacos, caring about a flag. Lo siento. I didn't realize how intrinsically American it was of me to think I could have an identity by having things. Spanish, tattoos, silver chains, scars. If I could do it again, I would tell myself that identity is defined as much by what you have as it is by what you've lost. Wanting to recover those things was like feeling homesick for a home I never had. That, to me, is Chicano. Thank you so much, and I really hope to see you soon.
Good evening. My name is Peter Chafe, and I work as a clerical assistant at the Brooklyn Heights branch, but I am actually a qualified librarian from my home country in Australia as well. First of all, congratulations to both Jean-Paul and Elizabeth for their nominations for being shortlisted. It is my pleasure tonight to discuss Daniel Sherrell's book, Warmth, Coming of Age at the End of Our World. Daniel's book is one that I feel needs to be read by as many people as possible. The subject matter alone it needs to be heard again and again in order for us to register that changes need to be made to the way we impact our planet's climate and to ensure the survival of our world. I found it an emotional journey of differences in attitudes towards the understanding of a need to attention climate change sooner than later. It does not set out how to solve the problem, but to raise awareness and an awakening of our minds. His use of talking to an unborn child is a premise that's been used before, but I found it particularly appropriate to his writing as someone who does not have children themselves. It allowed me to think more about what I can do, to look towards the future rather than just concentrating on the daily issues at hand. It makes you ask the question, what kind of planet will we pass on to our future generations? Or do they need to suffer the sins of their fathers? I found this book to be a personal account of somebody who is part of a movement that aims to draw attention to climate change. When I began to read the book, I found it to be an emotional roller coaster, but a ride that needed to be taken in order to confront the issues of climate change. The message of climate change that Dan draws our attention to is happening more frequently and will simply not go away by ignoring it. For instance, for most, Hurricane Ian is fresh in our minds, but how soon we'll move on to another natural disaster or other newsworthy story that will take center stage and divide our attention. Change can begin with one voice, but needs the backing of many supporters to succeed. A prime example, if you allow me a slight digress, is from my home country, Australia, where there's recently been a change in government over the last few months on this very issue of climate change. It was ignored by the previous government. In actuality, they worked against it. But the people of Australia brought about change due to the need to address this immediate crisis that is happening for them right now. In conclusion, I'll steal a quote from the New Yorker. Sherelle captures the complicated correspondence between hope and doubt, faith and despair, the pendulum of emotional status that defines our attitude towards the future. It's a book for the masses. Congratulations to Dan, a worthy shortlisted nominee for the prize. And thank you to the committee and allowing me to be part of that committee. Good evening.
Thanks so much, Peter, for that really generous introduction. As you can see, I meant to write privately in the chat, but I wrote publicly to everyone. It's Kismet, because I'm phoning in to this conference call right now from Sydney, Australia, where I've recently moved temporarily to join my partner, who's an Aussie citizen. So yeah, I wanted to extend my deep gratitude to the Brooklyn Public Library, to all of the librarians who are, in my opinion, the backbone of the intellectual life of our country, and some of the most important public servants. And I can't think of a higher honor than to be shortlisted for an award given out by a public library and a public institution, and to be in the company of so many amazing writers. It also feels a little bit like a full circle moment, because after I finished writing this book, Warmth, I wrote the manuscript and then I sat down and I Googled, how does one publish a book? And I did that Googling and that research from the main reading room of the Grand Army Plaza branch of the Brooklyn Public Library, and literally wrote my query letters from there. So it feels fitting that I'm here with you all today, and just really grateful to be brought back into the orbit of the library. So, as Peter mentioned, Warmth is a book about contending with the weight of having come of age under the climate crisis. And I wanted to read a short passage in the middle of the book, where I've just participated in an arrestable sit-in outside the office of, thankfully now, former Governor Andrew Cuomo. In Albany, we've been put in cuffs and processed by the police, and now we've been released and we're driving back to Brooklyn. Eventually, we were released with a summons for a court date the following month. The action has worked more or less as we intended. We've garnered enough press to get a rise out of the governor, and will soon parlay this into a meeting with his chief of staff. But by the time I sit down in the van for the ride home, the thrill has largely worn off. I feel tired, hunched in my seat by the window. Unfolding my laptop, I squint into its clamshell glow. For a moment, I'm surprised by my empty inbox, and then I remember I have no Wi-Fi. I take out my phone and turn on the mobile hotspot. The screen seems to pause a bit, and then the messages arrive, a block of bolded subjects running down past the bottom of the screen, typical for a day spent off of email. There are messages from reporters and volunteers and directors of this and that, some of them sent just to me, some to lists of thousands. I work through them mechanically, dispatching each with a sentence, maybe two, unclear on what I am saying until my fingers are already producing the words as if in a fugue state, capitalization falling away, syntax blurring, the replies appearing on screen like I haven't written them at all, like they are being preferred to me by some barely cogent third party. After a while, I close the laptop, unaware of what I've written, unable to make myself care. We are already halfway back to the city. I spend the rest of the drive with my cheek pressed to the leatherette of the sill, watching the pavement replenish itself frantically in the headlights. It never stops being strange that this is what I do now, that strategic breaches of the law are a part of my work, that I carpool to and from them in a van. As a child, I'd had other plans. At one point, I dreamed earnestly and absurdly of becoming a professional soccer player, still young enough to believe that careers arose naturally out of one's favorite grade school activity. Later, when my visions for the future sobered, I pictured myself as a landscape architect, raking beds of gravel into gently curving patterns, charting out pleasing constellations of trees. That was back when the world was a hidden premise, a smooth, hard plane. The future seemed to rise from it like a ramp, pointing upward at a manageable grade. All we had to do was walk up it in the direction of our choosing, and we'd come out better off, higher up, with a more expansive view over the terrain. But in the years it's taken us to age into the job market, something huge has shifted beneath our feet, a kind of temporal tectonics, a jolt of acceleration. Suddenly, the world is changing faster than we are, its cycles spinning out of control. Geologic time, for eons a dull murmur behind the backdrop of history, has come crashing into the inviolate space we'd reserved for those myopic little snippets of eternity that we referred to as our lifetimes. In the course of a decade then, it's become vaguely absurd to build our future in the world like we would a house on some land, just erected and trusted to stand. Increasingly, the only viable future seems to be in shoring up the future itself. And so the world transforms from a premise into a question, and we work desperately to answer it in our favor. The strangeness, though, comes from still being able to remember that prior world, the one in which nothing was going to change, in which it was still possible to treat the future as a linear projection of the present. The problem makes childhood seem very distant this way, a tiny scene at the end of a backward telescope, made of a different substance entirely than the halls of the Capitol, the plastic of the cuffs. Then again, maybe this isn't so strange. Just an update on that old loss of innocence, the latest expulsion from Eden. Just growing up, in other words. Thanks so much, and thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much, everyone. My name is Joel Whitney from the BPL Presents Arts and Culture team here at Brooklyn Public Library. And I just want to echo what has already been said multiple times. Big cheers and thanks to the finalists, Dan and everyone else who've read. And thanks so much to the committee members who are here, the chairs, and those especially who read citations, read all of these books and winnowed down that long list to this short list. Especially thanks to Dan for coming in from another time zone and another day. And thanks to all of you for being here. If you Sorry, I muted myself in mid-sentence. If you'd like to keep in touch with us at BPL Presents, you can follow us on bklynlibrary.org/BPL Presents. And tomorrow night, we're in Prospect Park Boathouse launching an anthology of the Lenape people, New York City's first people. And we hope you'll consider joining us there and in the events that are coming up. But once again, congratulations, Dan, and all of the finalists. And we look forward to seeing you at the Classic, I think on November 2nd. Is that right?
Hi, yes, that's correct. It's not the Classic in its prior, form. It's a virtual event hosted by Isaac, and it will be November 2nd. That's correct.
Thanks so much, Divya. Good night, everyone. Thanks again. See you soon.
Good night, everyone.